on this very special edition, a very special person joining in to start off and kickstart our New Year special series on Business Today. We have with us Ms. Devina Mehra. She's the founder and CMD at First Global. Warm welcome to you, ma'am, and thank you so much for taking the time out. I wish you at the beginning a very happy upcoming New Year 2025. May this year turn out to be the best so far for you personally and also professionally, for you, for your clients, and may you continue to give all our viewers through Business Today Television all the gems and pearls of wisdom that you've always shared. Thank you so much for being with us on this one, ma'am.
Thank you, Sakshi, for your warm wishes, and wish you and all the team at your end, as well as the viewers, a great happy new year in advance. May it be a blessed and prosperous new year for everyone.
Thank you so much for these warm greetings, ma'am. And finally, with your coming in, we can see finally some green on the screen, and that is Cherish 23-834 is coming back. We request you to come more often on our screen so that we can see more green, which has been largely, making us want more of it in the last 5 weeks or so, the kind of consolidation that we've seen in the markets. But your sense, ma'am, how have you been seeing this latter part of 2024? The first half we enjoyed with one-way up move, but the latter half, especially the last 3 months, have actually tested a lot of patience of investors. So put together for us, the key learnings that you've also seen for 2024.
The first thing is that a lot of investors are very new in the market, so they have not
Yes.
seen anything other than a market going up. But
Yes.
that's not the way markets behave. I looked at the data for the last 17, 18 years. There were only 3 or 4 years when the market correction was not in double digits at least. So, less than 10% fall from the top happened only very rarely. And this time, if you see 2023 also, we did not have a double digit correction. And right now, I think we are off maybe around 10% from the top. So it's not something which is unexpected. That's the way markets are, which people had forgotten. I mean, I had people coming and telling me that why are you so conservative? And you should be more aggressive when we want to take high risk. And I said the only thing that is certain with high risk is high losses. High returns are not certain. This is not the way this game is played. So first of all, remember
Yes.
that investing is a loser's game, and this is not just a line for me. It means that your first priority has to be not to lose. It doesn't mean that you will not lose at all. I mean, you will
Yes.
lose, it's a
Yes.
asset, but you should not take a big hit to your capital. So that should
Yes.
be your first priority. Only when you do that, do you have a hope of making the returns. And long-term data has shown the same thing. I saw data on mutual funds, and it said that the mutual funds which are on the top on a long-term basis are the ones which outperform during downturns. There was one fund, one scheme, which outperformed 93% of the upturn. So when the market went up, it went up more. And yet it was almost the bottom scheme because it could not, it fell more when the markets fell. So this has been a time when this has tested the patience of more conservative investors or fund also, because people think it's so damn easy to make money because
Yes.
so much has went up during the year, including a lot of riff-raff stocks. So no, not all small micro caps are bad
Yes.
companies stocks, but along with the good, the indifferent, and even the ugly went up. So that is something which people have to remember. And markets can test your patience a lot longer than the 5 weeks that we have gone through. I mean, the longest stretch I remember is from 1994 to 2003, a 9-year
Yes.
stretch when Sensex gave a net return of zero.
Wow.
And of course, after that 2003, it went up 6 times in less than 5 years. So that's how markets are. Returns can be very lumpy. So you had a whole decade, the 2011 to 20 decade, when the compounding was just a trifle over fixed deposit. So you
Yes.
effectively got no return, extra returns for investing in equity. And
Right.
that's why you had this massive bull run from 12.
True. Very true. Now, Devina ma'am, I just wanted to also ask you, like you rightly pointed out, even in the year-to-date basis, you know, we are up by about 13% for the Nifty, and this is not just marked for
But
this
that
year.
is
Devina ma'am, just wanted to also ask you to add a little bit on this. That, you know, we are again in the ninth straight year of positive returns for the Nifty right now, with a year-to-date return of say 13% odd. So I think the question now beckons, how long can this continue? And can this continue for the next few years as well? We have a lot of geopolitical tensions, macro changes that are taking place at this point in time. So does one need to further temper down in terms of expectations for the new year 2025?
See, I never give a 1 year index return target.
Sure, I
I
know.
never have 30 years, and because that's a fool's errand. It is something that you not only don't know, but you cannot know. In fact, recently Bloomberg did an analysis because in the US the data is available for longer. That how do the forecasts and actuals fare for every major investment bank and brokerage house in the world? So it's like I'm talking the Citicorps and the Merrill Lynches and so on, and everybody is off by a massive percentage because everyone likes to sit where say what everybody else is saying. So if the range is 10 to 15%, everyone will be in the 10 to 15%, because if you say 20% and then it is minus 10%, then you are the outlier. So it's better to be wrong along with everyone else.
Right. Okay, I think there is some kind of a technical glitch. We'll again try and get back to Devina ma'am as soon as her connection gets okay. But I think what she wants to tell us is that, you know, it's you're not right really to look at predictions of what next 1 year could really pan out. But it's better to focus on the long-term strategy right there. We'll try and have her back to explain to us. Yes, Devina ma'am is back with us. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So that was the thing that in that you had decade of below normal returns. But also remember that every time there's a bull run of this kind where all kinds of stocks go up, when the correction happens and then again the market goes up, it is often not the same stocks that go up. So anything which is in froth territory, whether it is, as I said, small cap, micro cap in that category, or in between, there are all kinds of themes that come in. I was looking at the defense funds, for example, that came
Yes.
early in the year. All of them have massively underperformed the market because often I say only half flippantly that the themes where there are a lot of new fund offerings coming, it is often the end of that theme rather than the beginning. So that's close to peaking out. So there will be things which have done very well in this bull run, which will kind of never come back for a very long time. But if you look at the mainstream stocks on a 2 year perspective or so, I'm not negative. That doesn't mean, as I said, that they couldn't go, the market can't go down another 5%. It very well could. If but it is still time to be invested. I don't think, it's a time to take a cash call because you can't afford to miss out on an upmove. I mean, this year itself, we expected volatility in March, we expected it in June, and it did happen, but it was very short-lived. So at that time, we had bought insurance in form of hedges, which is fine, because then if the market goes up, at least you are invested. So most of the time, it makes sense to be invested to the extent of your equity allocation. Do not put 100% in equity, but whatever is your equity allocation, this is again a study we did that over 40, 45 years, if you miss out on the 10 best days in the market, you actually missed out on 2/3 of the returns. And if you miss out on the best 30 days, which is not even 1 day every year, you miss out on 90% of the return. So that is also the flip side. So choose carefully, be in the right sector, right companies, but I don't think I would advise being out of the market, as I said, to the extent of your equity allocation, but temper your expectations. Beech mein to people were saying that, oh, I don't have too high expectations. I am happy with 25-30% compounding every year. So I'm okay if you triple in 2.5 or 3 years. I mean, while we have done that in the past, doesn't mean
Yes.
that that's applicable.
I know 25-30% was the average. Like you said, you know, a lot of these new investors, they've actually seen so much, they believe that this is the norm. That's how in Nifty can actually give you the return. So that's something that we have to really temper down. It's better than FD, but it certainly is not 30% every year. So you have to temper down your expectations there. Devina ma'am, then you did point out very important fact. One needs to identify the right kind of sectors to be in at the helm of the new year again. So any key sectors, themes that you have identified for yourself that you will be deploying all the fresh money that comes in for 2025 onwards, and where is it that you will also avoid? You know, what is it in the risk category even now?
Okay, so we look at everything afresh every quarter. So I
Okay.
cannot say that next 1 year this is
Sure.
what is going to happen. I will tell you where we are overweight as of now, but of course we are coming to the end of December. So another two,
Sure.
3 weeks we will do a rebalance. So things may change. As of now, where we are overweight is pharma, IT, auto components. So these would be the major sectors where we are overweight. A sector we were overweight for 3 years was industrial machinery and capital goods. Now we are somewhat underweight that sector. We in the middle of the year we thought maybe FMCG is beginning to bottom out, but that did not really play out. And FMCG is, I think, the sector index is now a bit negative for the calendar year. So that would be, we bought a few more chemicals than we had at the beginning of the year. So broadly, that's where we are currently. But as I said, you know, we do a base zero rebalance every quarter because we don't want to be held back by what we thought earlier or what we bought earlier. So we look at it afresh and we look at everything on a noise-free, bias-free basis because our artificial intelligence machine learning systems will apply the same criteria for all stocks above 1,000 crore market cap. We don't look at smaller than that. But that's how we rank. We look at stocks and then we select. So we don't want to say that I know what's going to happen for the next 3 years or 5 years. That visibility nobody has.
Right. Could you also point out for us in the upcoming new year, what could be working as headwinds for the Indian markets per se? What is it that one needs to really watch out for with one eye? And what is it that would continue to be as a tailwind?
Well, I mean, as they say, the risk is what you don't see forthcoming. So that's always the caveat because risk is always difficult to foresee in advance. I mean, 2022 beginning, let alone the market people, the Economist had a cover story in
Yes.
January, the 10 geopolitical hotspots. And they did not mention Russia and Ukraine, which the war broke out just the next month. So
Absolutely.
I mean, let alone the pandemic, which obviously nobody foresaw, but I'm saying even things which you could have. So that's always difficult to say. In terms of the Indian economy, there are causes for concern. So while people found most of those causes only after the market started correcting the end of October, but I have been talking about it for the last few quarters, and the consumption slowdown did not happen this financial year. It had already happened quite substantially the previous financial year when the consumption number in the GDP was the lowest in 21 years. And you could see that the GDP was running on a single engine of government spending. So that, and of course, this year, this time, of course, the headline GDP number also was that much lower. Consumption slowdown is apparent. And that, again, derives out of the fact that we are not able to find employment. So we talk of the demographic dividend, but the demographic dividend can fructify only if you find jobs for the people in the workforce. And there's a big gap there as we speak. So there are concerns there. But of course, you know, the corporate India and markets are not on a one-to-one correlation with the economy. So I never had this illusion that I heard the people on TV saying that the economy is doing so well. All my friends are buying luxury homes and luxury SUVs. And your friends are not the economy. There are also 80 crore Indians who need free rations. And you see the inflation, the food inflation hurting the consumer basket. So for example, the RBI doesn't have an easy task ahead. I can
Yes.
tell you that.
Yes.
So those are the concern areas. But as I said, that doesn't necessarily translate into uh, bad news for all of corporate India or the
Right.
stock market.
Absolutely. So this was what I was coming to about the kind of action that the US Fed is anticipated to take. What do you think slower rate cuts now, shallower rate cuts will mean for an emerging market like India? Therefore, you already pointed out that the task ahead for RBI is not going to be easy because at the one hand they have to look at inflation which is not cooling down to their own expected level. There is imported inflation that there is a big risk of as well. Slowing growth is again there is something that they have to really navigate through. Looking at all of these situations, how is it that you expect the fund flows to really react, and what does it really mean for Indian markets going forward?
And for RBI, I would also add managing the currency because they have
Yes,
been
currency.
trying to make sure the rupee doesn't depreciate much. And if they cut rates now, that would be an additional, pressure down on the rupee. So it's quite on all fronts. It is a difficult challenge. As far as the US is concerned, I mean, I had written an article on this after Donald Trump was elected,
Yes.
that people are speculating as to what would happen. But there are so many uncertainties because
Yes.
even if you look at his campaign, a lot of things are contradictory because you're talking about loss of purchasing power for the ordinary.
Right. Okay, I think there is some kind of a technical glitch right there. We'll just wait for the connection to stabilize, and Devina ma'am will be back. What we are discussing is that what could be the impact. Okay, yes, Devina ma'am, we can hear you
Yes,
now. Yeah.
right. I think so. As far as Trump is concerned, what he was saying, on one hand the tariffs, the other side the loss of purchasing power,
Yes.
they are contradictory because if you push up tariffs, inflation goes up. If you are trying to have a weak US dollar, but a lot of things you're saying will actually make the US dollar stronger. Defense stocks went up with Trump coming in, but he's also saying, I don't want to be the policeman of the world. So there are just so many contradictions. And if you wanted to increase uncertainty, you have Elon Musk in the mix. So as I said, you don't even know what Trump and his team will do. So to speculate on, therefore, what will be the implication for the US economy, then the US stock market, and then what happens geopolitically around the world, how other people react to what other leaders react to what Trump does. And therefore, what is it? It is like all too many possibilities. If you look at, even he's talking about cutting government expenditure. Now, government expenditure even in the US is something like 36-37% of the GDP. So if you cut that, that will be deeply recessionary. Of course, I mean, as of now, I have never been in the camp that Fed will cut very aggressively. I remember beginning of 2023, it was that they will cut in the second half of 2023. I was never in agreement with that. 2024, it was that cuts will start in March itself. We were always clear that it would happen in the second half. So I'm not so surprised that, the trajectory is now not as steep as it was going to be. But as far as Indian markets are concerned, the liquidity from overseas is never really the driver. I mean, this is a question all TV interviewers ask me about flows from portfolio investors. But if you look at, there is not, in 1 month, yes, it can be that the FPI flows go down or are negative and market falls. But if you look at a longer term basis, we have been unable to find any correlation between FPI flows and, what is happening in the markets. And this I'm talking from the time this flow started, because I started First Global. One of the triggers was the market opening to foreign portfolio investors. So I have seen it right from the beginning, from 1994. And there has no correlation. So, and I mean, the biggest, I tell you that statistics, 94 to 2003, the market gave returns.
Yes.
But that was also when time the flows came in.
Interesting. Interesting, very, very interesting. Now, Devina ma'am, since you did talk about Donald Trump, I want to then ask you, and you did say that there is only going to be higher uncertainty because we just do not know how is he going to be really shaping the policies and whether that will be benefiting the emerging markets like India or be against it. Is it better then to probably be cautious on the export-oriented sectors, those which have larger exposure to countries like US and the policy shifts there? Should one protect their domestic portfolios in that fashion, maybe focus on domestic cyclicals then?
The cyclicals are not looking particularly great. As I told you, there are concerns on the consumption side anyway in India. And the others, their most cyclicals are, even if you look at somebody who might be selling locally, let's say steel or something, they are price takers depending on what is happening on the global markets. So the policy risk I would think would only be for IT services. So yeah, I mean that is one possible area because anyway India doesn't export that much, or I don't think India will be particularly on the American radar for cutting back because we are not such big partners on that side of the game, meaning imports for US and exports for India, except for IT services. So that if at all there's a policy vulnerability, that's the one sector where there could be something.
Okay. The other space will also be beyond equities. I mean, with Donald Trump's incoming, we've seen what has happened to the cryptocurrency space. How are you really looking at this space? I just wanted a broader, sense from as an expert. How are you really looking at this space? The way it has rallied, just with the anticipation that there will be favorable regulatory policies. Do you think investors should look at crypto a little differently with probably the mother market focusing so much on crypto?
Crypto, into my mind, and this has been my view for the last 3-4 years. It is. I don't say that it's not a valid asset class at all, but it's a highly volatile asset class. Even in 2021, I had written that even at that stage that this is a asset class that
Right. Okay. I think we have that technical glitch again. We'll be back. I think crypto is what we are discussing, and Devina ma'am just made a point. She's saying that she's not discounting it as a valid asset class, but she calls it a very volatile asset class. She's here with us back. Devina ma'am, yes, you were talking about crypto.
Yeah, in the past also it has corrected 70 to 85% plenty of time. This is something I said in 2021, and thereafter again it happened. And whatever are the positives of Trump coming in, it are already factored into the price. So, I mean, at this stage, I don't think it makes particularly great sense to get in, number one. And number two, in any case, this is an asset class in which probably you should have 2, 3, 4%. This is not an asset class where you should have 30% of your portfolio or anything like that. So adding little bit, yes, it is okay. It is also in some senses, it is less correlated with other asset classes, so it adds some performance points. But it's not a sector, not a segment where you should have a lot of exposure.
Okay. And, beyond crypto also, just wanted to understand, what about precious metals, commodities and the other asset classes? How will they be looking, vis-a-vis equities in 2025? With the way gold and silver has outperformed, do you think that outperformance could continue? Because we continue to have geopolitical tensions and, of course, a lot of uncertainties again at play. Okay, I think, yeah, Devina ma'am is back with us. Devina ma'am, I just wanted to ask you on what...
You can see Geo for that. They have been very erratic of late for my internet connection. So
no worries.
Yes, gold and silver, yes, we always do have some exposure to gold, and we added some silver this year.
Okay.
These are segments where you can have some part of your asset allocation, but not a huge part, because it's not that gold is a particularly safe asset. But this is only a myth that we have. So if you look at the dollar price of gold in the early 80s, that was not breached for some 20 odd years. and there was a 60% reduction in the middle. The next peak, again, there was a 40% loss in the middle. So it only looks good in rupee terms because the rupee has been depreciating. And earlier, and our grandmothers were right in that, it was good to buy gold because that was the only currency hedge available. But that is not the case now. Now you can, the liberalized remittance scheme, the LRS scheme of the RBI is quite generous, and you can buy other assets and not just gold internationally. So gold has not proven to be a safe asset in dollar terms. It is only the rupee depreciation that makes it look good. And one of the things for the new year I want to leave your viewers with is that please look at global diversification and real global diversification, because just buying a US index is not good enough, because US also will not outperform forever. This is also something people forget. So, but a global diversification is essential. I mean, when I started working, the the dollar was 12 rupees. Now it's 85 rupees. So that's so if you're talking long-term financial planning, you cannot forget this fact that there was an 85% depreciation in the course of less than a career. So if you're talking about your retirement goal and 20-year hence goals, global diversification is key to that. And just
Absolutely.
gold is not good enough.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it's always a pleasure to listen to your words of wisdom, ma'am. And thank you so much for sharing all of these thoughts, wonderful ideas with all our viewers. Global diversification is something that we ourselves will also focus on in 2025 to bring in that extra aspect to all our viewers. We'll take it up from you as our own mandate as well to bring in certain shows which focus on global diversification as well. Many thanks for being with us as always throughout the entire year of 2024, sharing these pearls of wisdom, and again wishing you a very happy and a prosperous new year, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sakshi, and a great new year for all of you.
Thank you so much.